everyone, thank you for joining our Apogee Up Close webcast. This is a webcast that we run twice every month on a range of different topics from technology and business aspects of running an API program. Topics are based on popular demand. You can sign up multiple times, and the great thing is at the end of the webcast you have an opportunity to ask questions of us. Speaking of which, my name is Alicia Patterson. I'm a consultant within the customer success team in Apogee at Google Cloud. Delighted to be joined today by David Freeman. David Freeman is the General Manager for API products at Telstra, which is Australia's biggest telecommunications provider. And today David's going to talk to us a little bit around the history of Telstra's API program and then how Telstra is productizing and monetizing their assets with APIs today. Welcome on board, David.
Alicia, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
No, it's great to have you. And you've got such a great story to tell as well. So maybe let's start off with a bit of an understanding around, how does, your API program fit within Telstra's overall digital vision?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And there's quite a number of things Telstra's doing on the digital front. One of the big things we're going through at the moment is a digitisation platform, or digitisation program, I should say. And so what that is that's looking at replacing all our old business systems, which have been around for quite some time, and trying to move those up the stack into this new cloud-based way of working. That's everything from billing to CRM to operational support systems, all getting renewed in the cloud. So they're all API driven, of course.
Right.
So at the center of that is, well, how do we get those different systems, those new systems communicating with each other? And that's where API gateways come into play, and that's where Apogee comes into play. So certainly from a business transformation perspective, the API program is right at the forefront of that, because without an API program, you really can't digitise the business. Mm. Then when we look at external, we look at our customers and partners. Well, increasingly we're getting demands from our customers and partners for automated outcomes. Right. No longer do they want to fill out paper forms, they don't want to fill out web forms anymore. They want to get automatic, programmatic outcomes, and again, that's APIs. So our API program has been accelerating as a result of that to provide that value to our customers and partners through the power of APIs.
Awesome, and just on that, you touched on the kind of alignment to the strategic goals of the organisation. How important has a level of senior leadership, awareness or sponsorship been to the success of the program?
Yeah, that executive sponsorship has been critical, especially when we started out the program a few years ago. APIs and an API program, API products, was quite a new concept for the company. I mean, APIs have been around for a very long time, but trying to link APIs back to business value, that's quite new. And so having executive sponsorship that believed in the program, can provide that executive air cover, and also bring other stakeholders to the table to help convince them that this is a real thing and this is something we should be doing, that was critical for us, for sure.
In many organisations we talk to, I guess there's structural separation between IT that might own the API platform and then the part of the business that's actually creating products and going out to market with those, which ultimately leads to perhaps complexity and slows down the pace of development around those capacities. How do you tackle this at Telstra, and how is it different at Telstra?
Sure, yeah, Telstra has those same challenges. We're a big organisation. We have network engineering, IT engineering, product engineering. So how do those different departments interact? Sometimes it is difficult between those organisations, between those departments to get great outcomes. So one of the key things that we've done is, since we've started this program on the product side, is we've tried to bring as much of that capability in-house as we possibly can. So we own the end-to-end developer experience. So that includes the developer portal, the construction of that, and the maintenance of that. And it also includes the API products, the API proxies as well, that they're constructed by engineers that we have. Interesting enough, those engineers also own the back-end system that controls our API products as well. So all our SMS and MMS messages going through that back-end system, they're the same engineers that are actually creating the API product. The API gateway itself, that is managed by IT. So we maintain a very close relationship with that team. Actually, they only sit a couple of floors below us.
Right.
So we maintain very close relationships. We use things like Slack,
Right.
obviously meetings. We use our communication tools that we have to make sure we keep up the collaboration between ourselves and IT, who own the API gateway,
Right.
to make sure that we can bring out high quality and quick outcomes to our customers as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. It sounds like in spite of being quite a large organisation, actually operating as quite a sort of small unit.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we've tried to keep that, again, as much of that stuff in our control as possible. The way we like to think of it is it's a bit like a startup within a business,
Yeah.
and when you're running a startup, the best way to learn and get the experience is to do as much as you can yourself, and then you have that control over the quality, and you also have that control over the priority of what you need to work on. So that kind of model for us has worked quite well to get quick outcomes to the market.
And then what does scaling that look like while managing or controlling for quality in the outcomes?
Yeah, so scaling that for us, the important part is automate, get ruthlessly efficient. And so when we start out, some things we can automate, some things we can't. We might have to do in a manual way. The important thing is with those manual processes though, making sure we can set up those manual processes so they can be automated down the track. So as we scale, we can easily refactor those into more automated outcomes. So that's really the key is automating, being ruthlessly efficient, looking at the areas of your customer journey and your product life cycle that are still fairly manual, and automating aspects of that. So a good example is we use tools like Jira and Bitbucket.
Right.
We use automation testing tools as well to make sure that we can get automated outcomes.
So, David, how do you talk about or articulate the value of APIs to product or business participants in the organisation?
Yeah, that's been quite difficult. Again, Telstra being a traditional enterprise, it's hard for a lot of our product managers to conceptualise an API. First, what is it?
Yeah, it's a bit jargonistic, isn't it?
It is actually. And then second, well, what is the value that it can provide? So the way that we like to try and get around that is saying, well, look, we're entering a whole new market here that Telstra has never touched before, the developer market. But more so than that, there's more and more developers working within large enterprises as well, and they're having a lot more influence than they've ever had before over business decisions. And we've seen that before in Telstra with some of our products that we've been able to successfully sell to the C-suite, but then those products don't get adopted because the people at the coalface doing the work, the developers, don't adopt that product because it's too hard to use.
Right.
And so what we've done is we've turned that on its head and said, hey, look, these developers, this community is very, very important. They're very influential. And obviously what we're seeing is the C-suite and the IT managers are talking more down to the developer level to say, hey, would you guys actually use this tool? And if the answer comes back as no, then it's well, we'll go back to the drawing board and
Right.
offer a new product to us. So we've actually taken that advice and we've said, look, this is why the developer community is important, because they make business decisions, or they're very influential in business decisions. So that's how we start the conversation with product managers. The second part of that is, well, where's the proof? Well, great, you've told me this is the case.
Yeah.
How does that result in real outcomes?
Right.
So that's where we've had our API program build a couple of APIs that are really accelerating out in the market and actually getting customers on board, and we're actually seeing revenue come through the door. So we can actually show them those facts and figures to say we're getting this many developers registering a day, we're getting this many customers coming on board each day, and we're generating this revenue, and you can see that it's accelerating. And so once you present those hard facts, it's the conversation becomes quite easy.
Right.
And it's, well, how do I get on board then on this program?
Right.
How do I
benefit the same way?
Yeah, how do I benefit the same way? How do I get access to this new channel as well? Because for a product manager, that's pure new growth for those guys, brand new business.
Right. And how do you attract developers to your ecosystem? How do you incentivize them in order to encourage their participation?
There's a few different ways we do that. One of the ways is marketing, and I guess marketing in the developer space is a bit different than how we've traditionally completed marketing. So we've hired a developer evangelist. His name's Stephen Cooper, or Developer Steve, as he likes to go by his name. So he's been a great asset for the team, and he's really helped shape the marketing for our Telstra Dev developer program, and also teach the marketing area how to market to developers. And so he'll be going out there to meetups, conferences. We've got our own Twitter channel as well, at Telstra Dev, and an open source community as well on GitHub, where we release all our SDKs and sample code. So that marketing aspect is very, very important for able to get on developers and discover Telstra Dev. But the other aspect of it is even when they've discovered Telstra Dev, it's, well, how do they actually get into Telstra Dev? How can we rapidly accelerate that? And that's where we look at, well, how do we reduce the barriers for entry as much as possible? Even things as simple as the registration form. So making sure that they put in as little detail as possible to get registered and get started. So just asking for the bare minimum. What's your first name? What's your last name? What's your mobile number, email address, and password? And that's all we ask for to get them started. We don't ask for war and peace. We don't ask for their passport details or anything like that. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect as well is giving them access to a free trial immediately upon registration. And that's one of the most important parts of the program, because developers won't use your software, won't use your APIs unless it's really, really easy to use. So for us, that means a free trial. And so we give them a free trial to our messaging API, where they get 1,000 free SMS and MMS, and that doesn't expire, that lives for a long time, so they can come back later and develop, or they can do it straight away. It's up to them.
Excellent. So David, in terms of tackling how you monetize, the messaging API that you have, what was the journey you went on to understand, how to bring that to the market, and importantly, how to make sure you monetize developers in a way that was, as you mentioned before, attached to value, as opposed to being a burden and a barrier for their adoption.
So when we started the program, the messaging API program, to construct that product, we were very, very keen to make sure we built in the developer experience. We didn't want to just build this product in a vacuum and then release that out to market. So what we did, we actually ran a couple of beta programs. So I think we ran the first one in May last year, where we constructed the first very alpha release of our API, and also the alpha release of our portal, and we're able to get a bunch of developers in a room to be able to test both of those things out. And the feedback we got from that was phenomenal. And one of the most important pieces of feedback is monetization, what we needed to monetize. So we already had a bit of an idea about what we should monetize, but that really helped A, validate what we were thinking, and B, helped us change some of the things we were looking at monetizing. One of the good examples was around bulk messaging. So one of the things you can do with our API is through one API call you can send out many, many messages. And we weren't really thinking about that at the time. So out of that beta program that we ran in May, we came out with a feature of doing bulk messaging. And then we had to think about, well, how do we monetize that? And talking with those developers, well, it's very clear that we need to monetize each of those messages as a paid call. So rather than doing it the one API call and monetizing on that single API call, we need to be able to monetize every single one of the messages that was sent out. And that's where we had to think about getting those callbacks, those responses back from our back-end system into monetization to be able to track the valuable charges rather than the API call itself. So that certainly helped us to be able to construct a good monetization program and the right pricing and what we needed to charge for with our messaging API running those beta programs. And we ran a number of those before we released out to market. And then in September, we released our MVP and our MVP portal that allowed us to test the market before we did any big marketing launch. And then a month and a half later, we'd been able to gather some of that feedback, make some improvements, and then we did our full launch at the end of October that year. So doing that iterative approach and that slowly building up to a launch, and obviously working back directly with the developer community we were going to be selling to, was critical for us in developing monetization.
Excellent. So how important, or is it not important, that you have standardization across industry, for capabilities like messaging?
You mean like having a standardized?
Yes, like a standardized set of APIs that all industry might be using.
Yeah, that's interesting. With messaging API, one of the unique things we've found is that really just spans across any industry.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, it spans across any customer segment. Everyone from I don't know, mum and a dad with their IoT capability,
right.
with their door lock, and wanting to get a message back out from their door lock when it's opened or closed, all the way through to a big bank, for example, that wants to send out one-time passcodes for doing transactions.
Right.
So we've found with the messaging API, the way that, again, we've constructed it is it spans across industries, it spans across different size customer segments as well. And that's because we're concentrating on, well, what is the value that this thing provides, and then designing those features as features that the developer can access. And I think what you find is with developers, it doesn't matter what developer is working in what industry, they're going to want to access the same thing in the same kind of way. So for us it was important, well, we're constructing this for the developer community, so how does that product need to look for them?
Right.
Not necessarily how does this product need to look for healthcare, or how does this product need to look for transport or logistics or retail.
Right.
It's how does this product need to look for the developer? And then we look at the features of the product and go, well, how does our customer want to be able to use those features of the product and expose that through the API?
Right.
So that's a good example where we've had an API that's been very, very broadly adopted by many, many industries and many different customer segments. Looking at a specific industry vertical, we've got another API that we released, which is actually a really interesting use case, and that's our event detection API. And that's something that has a very specific industry that it targets, and something that we specifically went after as well. So we've got a lot of feedback from the financial industry that there's been banking fraud that's been happening.
Right.
And some people might know about this type of banking fraud, but it's called SIM jacking or SIM swapping fraud. And again, this is where the mobile handset is becoming a lot more intrinsically connected to people's identity.
Yeah.
So pretty much when you leave home, you'd probably rather leave your wallet at home than your mobile phone, and that's how important the mobile phone is becoming to people's identity.
Yeah.
Fraudsters are picking up on this. So what they'll want to do is try and steal someone's identity, and they need the mobile handset to be able to facilitate that.
Right.
So what they'll do is they'll go in and try and get your phone, or they will try and do a SIM swap on your phone.
Right.
So then they'll pretend to be you. They'll swap the SIM.
So the network will basically send everything over to their
Exactly.
device, and now they can get the one-time
Exactly,
password
and they'll
set.
get the one-time passcode.
Yeah.
And the first thing that the customer would know about that, or the victim would know about that, is that their mobile phone would stop working.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they'll find that these bank charges
Right.
will be racked up. So that's a big problem, not just in Australia, but everywhere around the world as well.
Yeah.
So what we've been doing there is we've constructed our event detection API, which actually allows banks and financial institutions to detect when those SIM swap events occur.
Right.
And so that's a very specific industry segment that API targets, but it solves a very specific problem for that industry.
So David, what do you measure in your API program?
Well, because we're part of the product side of the business, the main thing we measure is how much money we're making, the revenue that's coming through the door. And actually that's been probably the best measure for us. Obviously Telstra is a business. We're in the business of making money, and money is just a great way of seeing how much value you're providing customers. So that's what our main metric is. How much money are we making from the APIs that we're selling to developers, because that's a measure of how much value we're providing to them. And that's where the API, the Apogee monetization module really comes in handy, to be able to rate, to be able to meter, and to be able to charge back to our developer community as well.
So David, how are you monetizing your APIs? What kind of billing strategy or approach are you using?
That's a really, really good question, actually. We focused on that quite heavily last year when we were constructing monetization. So the main thing that we're monetizing at the moment is post-paid. So what we have is our customers, they rack up charges, and then at the end of the billing month, we then bill those customers. So I've got that connected into Telstra's enterprise-grade billing system, and that was the first billing system we thought we'd connect into because that's where most of our customers are today. And that's actually been quite successful. So we've got quite a number of customers that have onboarded themselves. They've come in, we've set them up with Telstra billing, and then at the end of the month, once they have their charges racked up, we then simply post those charges to their Telstra bill. The next thing we're actually looking to roll out is credit card. A lot of our Telstra customers are very, very new, so we're actually entering into a brand new market that Telstra hasn't touched before. So these are new customers of Telstra's, and that's actually quite important. When we think about Telstra, it's very ubiquitous across Australia. We thought we touched on almost every customer in Australia, but there's this new developer market out there that we haven't had before. So getting them onto the Telstra bill can be a bit of a challenge sometimes because we have to set them up. But with things like credit card, that's something that a customer can come in and completely self-serve end to end and start getting charged for the value that they're generating through the API. So that's the next billing integration that we'll be doing is back into credit card. And so what we've set up now with our monetization engine is the ability to now connect into multiple billing engines. And we do hope and do plan to extend billing beyond credit card into other payment services in the future, but right now it'll be Telstra Bill and it'll be credit card. Both of those are post-paid services as well, so that's very much a cloud-like experience as well. So we do a consumption-based pay-as-you-go method with all our APIs. So that's actually quite important to support the developer community as well, because they start at zero and they won't get charged anything if they don't use the API. And if they use the API and they use specific features of that API that provide value, then they'll get charged for that consumption. And then they'll get charged at the end of the month, either to their Telstra bill or their credit card, depending on the preferred billing method that they've set up through the developer portal.
In terms of then monetizing, like billing, your developers, how do you balance that with trying to attract them to, participate in your ecosystem while at the same time, obviously extracting value for the business?
Yeah, that's another really great question, actually. So one of the most important things we need to do is make sure we can get developers started as quickly as possible. One of the challenges we have with Telstra is a lot of our products are very, very suitable for the high-end enterprise side of the market. And a lot of the times how we monetize and commercialize those products is there's upfront fees, there's fixed fees per month, and generally there isn't any free trials associated with that. With APIs, that's allowed us to actually reinvent the way we do products and the way that we're able to attract people to our products as well, because we can do that in a more cloud consumption-based way.
Right.
So one of the things we went off with straight out of the gate was we wanted to make sure that any of our developers registering on our portal got access immediately to a free trial. So our flagship API that we launched last year is Messaging API, and that's for SMS and MMS messages in Australia. You can send to and from using SMS or MMS. So straight out of the gate, when a developer registers on Telstra Dev Portal, they get access to a free trial, and that gives them 1,000 messages for free, SMS or MMS. And so that allows them to get started immediately. So they get their API keys, and then we give them a bunch of SDKs, a Postman collection as well, so they can start playing with the API and developing with it to try and get to their outcomes as well. So that really helps us to be able to accelerate developers to get started and get that code to production. And once they're ready and they've used their 1,000, or perhaps they haven't used as much, then they can sign up for a pay-as-you-go plan. And that's quite a seamless experience. They log onto the portal, they provide their billing details, and then immediately, as soon as they've provided their billing details, they get access to the production level API, which comes with a few new features, but then it's unlocked for unlimited usage, and they just start using the product.
It'd be interesting to know, what does API product management mean at Telstra today?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And the way I like to think about API product management is how we think about product management generally as well. It's what is the product, what is the value, what are the features of that product, how are we going to take that product out to market, who's the audience for that product, how are we going to advertise it. So all those genuine, normal aspects of product management come into play when we talk about APIs as well. It's no different. It might be a programmatic set of code, but it's still a product at the end of the day that someone's going to consume. It just happens to be consumed by a different audience, in this case the developer market, rather than a standard business market. So certainly for API product management, we have to think about all those things around monetization.
Okay.
How are you going to monetize the API? What is the business value behind that API that developers want to be able to consume? How are we going to market the API? What are the features that we need to provide in the API?
Right.
The feedback coming back out as well from the developers, and how we feed that feedback and those feature requests back into the product lifecycle as well. So yeah, when I think about product management for APIs, it's no different to how we do product management for other products in Telstra.
So given that, I respect that it is a product management problem to solve, but typically we see organisations lead the API management from within a technology part of the business. So how have you organised at Telstra around APIs as products? What does your team look like?
Yeah, that's right. A lot of API programs usually come out of the IT side of the organisation, which is a degree or two of separation away from the customer. In this case, API product management, where we're right at the coalface with the customer. So we did something unique there with our API program. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to hold as much of that control over that developer experience and the API productization experience as we possibly could. We don't have a team that's massive or large at all, but what we have done is we've created a small team of engineers who have the capability to not only come up with the ideas for the product and the pricing and the product strategy, but importantly to construct the API product itself. So we have the engineers building the code, talking directly with our API product managers, and then also talking directly to our developer audience as well to construct that. So that's probably the unique thing that we're doing within Telstra is in the product management sphere for APIs, we're not just coming up with the product idea and the business case, we're also constructing, developing and operating that API product as well. So that is a key difference, and that's been quite successful for us.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And it is something which we see works really well when an organisation and the people that are building the APIs can be really close to how those APIs are being consumed, and then bring that outside in perspective right to the way they build and take them to market. So in Telstra, to what degree then is there federated, distributed development of APIs, and how do you make sure then that your centralised team is close to those parts of the business and their users?
Yeah, when we started the program, we actually started centralising that API building capability, but we very quickly worked out, look, that is just not going to scale across a company the size of Telstra. So we quickly pivoted to a decentralised model, and that stands in place today. So it's been going for a few years. So we have an open platform using the Apogee software. It's our main API gateway to get strategic product outcomes. And so what that enables us to do is it really democratises that API development experience, and then anyone in Telstra can get access to that platform to create and release APIs either externally or internally within Telstra. And there's different control mechanisms we have as to whether or not you're going to release a product external to the developer community or within Telstra. But the important thing is that we've democratised that. When it comes to releasing API products out to the external market, that's where my team gets involved.
Right.
So we provide a lot of the guidance and a lot of the consultancy on how to get a product out to market, how pricing needs to happen for that API, how we monetize, the documentation for the API. We've got a team that looks after open sourcing software development kits and sample code as well. So we provide a lot of those tools, capabilities and consultancy to try and help the API product owners bring their APIs out to market in a high quality and Telstra way.
Yeah, and that's so important, I guess, isn't it, to make sure you provide some controls for quality without necessarily slowing down the ability to get stuff done, right, and respond to opportunity.
It is. It's a real balance between very, very high governance and
Yes.
having complete open and zero control. And it's finding that middle ground, and I like to call it light touch governance,
Right.
that we want to be more guides on helping people get their products out. And that's because we want to make sure we empower people to own the experience end to end. So we're very, very conscious of not stepping on people's toes and not stopping people from releasing their APIs. Of course, there are some things we need to go through when we think about the pricing and legal and the content that we provide. We want to make sure that's provided to our developers in a consistent way, because they have an expectation of the type of experience they want to get from Telstra from the other APIs that they're consuming. So we provide all that advice to API product owners and constructors. And so once we get them on board, they understand the way that we want to be able to bring out the APIs, and we haven't had any challenges to date with bringing APIs out to market in a different way. We've been able to provide them in a consistent way by providing that guidance and that light touch governance.
So David, what are you excited about in the future of your business? What are the next big horizons for you?
Well, the main thing I'm excited about is actually growing our business. So we've only been in business for less than 12 months now. So the most important thing for us right now is concentrating on growing that business. So accelerating developers, obviously listening to developers, bringing their feedback on and iteratively improving the products that we have today. But the next big thing that I'm really excited on is IoT. So Telstra has a great IoT story. We've got a fantastic network. Our 4G network, our LTE network is fantastic. We've got Cat M1 enabled as well on our network too. So that really helps unlock IoT devices on a mobility network, and that's all through Telstra. One of the things I mentioned yesterday is that Telstra's coverage for our network reaches 99% of Australia's population. So having IoT and Telstra's network together is quite a valuable proposition. Now, us bringing out capabilities on IoT, so an IoT API, that is something that's really exciting the developer community. So I see that as the next biggest thing for us is again, looking at the value of our mobile network, extending that to IoT and providing that valuable capability through to our developer community.
Yeah, that really is very exciting. I think it's got lots of great growth for you there.
Yeah, I think so.
David, thank you so much for joining us for this webinar today. I think the insights you've given in terms of how you tackle the kind of problems that we see lots of customers also struggling with, I think is quite interesting and hopefully valuable too for our audience. So now we'll open up to questions from the audience. We'd love to hear what questions you have for David. So the first question I see come up here that's interesting is, at Telstra, how is monetization tracked against API usage?
That's another good question from the audience. So the key thing for us is when we're monetizing APIs is not just to look at the API calls and monetize the APIs based on the call volume. You've really got to look behind the product and go, well, what is the value the developer's getting from that product, and how do we monetize that? So that's the most important thing.
So another question here, how do you incorporate a free trial, since we know that developers want to try before they buy?
So I mentioned before that when developers register, they get access to the free trial, and again, that's critical. That is really important for developer adoption. I'd recommend anyone starting an API program, you've got to have a free trial. So when they register, we've actually created a specific API product called the free trial. Now, the important thing with that is not only do you get access to 1,000 free messages when you register, it also gives us the ability to add other API proxies or other API products into that API product. And so that means that anytime another developer registers and we've got another free trial capability, they'll immediately get access to that free trial as well. So it allows us to scale out that free trial to constantly add to it as we release more and more products that will have a free trial capability. So yeah, that's how we do free trials at Telstra.
Excellent. So another question here, David. How do you market to developers to attract them to your platform?
Well, the developer market is brand new to Telstra. Telstra really hasn't engaged with the developer markets before. And so that's new for our product management group. What we've done there is we've actually hired a dedicated person to help us shape up the marketing and to engage with the developer audience. So they're called developer evangelists or developer relations managers. So we've got a gentleman by the name of Stephen Cooper, or he goes by the name of Developer Steve, and he actually sits in our marketing area. Now, the good thing about Telstra is product and marketing actually sit together under one group. And so Steve works with us every single day, and then he works with the developers every single day, going to things like meetups, conferences. We've got our own dedicated Twitter channel at Telstra Dev. So that allows us to be able to get the message out there in a more organic way to the developers. The other aspect of the program as well in marketing developers, it's really important to have an open source program. So that was one of the key things we set up when we kicked off this program in 2017 and released our messaging API. Was we've released a bunch of software development kits and sample code on our GitHub repository, which is just github.com/Telstra. And that's where developers can come in and get access to all our open source code that we've developed. So it's really having a developer evangelist, having an open source program, and thinking a little bit differently about how you do marketing traditionally, and really going by what the developer evangelist says as to how to market to developers. It's important.
So another great question here, David. In your journey to date, what have been some of the big aha moments for the program?
Probably the most recent aha moment we had was linking our API program directly back to business outcomes. So I've mentioned about the messaging API and how we monetize and sell that. That's actually been the biggest thing that's been able to get the rest of the business on board and behind us, especially our leadership team as well. We're in the product side of the business. Obviously, being a telecommunications company, we want to sell more telecommunications services. So linking our API program directly to making revenue for the company has been one of the most impactful things that we've done to help us accelerate our API program.
So what advice would you provide to a team starting off on their API journey today?
So if you're a traditional enterprise starting off on your API journey today, there's a few key ingredients that we found that made us successful. One is having a dedicated API team. It doesn't need to be big. You can start with 2 or 3 people, but certainly having a team that is dedicated to executing your API strategy is fundamental. The second thing is making sure your strategy is business-led as well. We've seen this a number of times in Telstra where there's been a technology-led program, and we've had API programs before in Telstra where it's been technology-led and it hasn't been quite successful. And that's because it hasn't linked directly back to business value. So making sure that your strategy is business-led. And so that's talking to things about monetization, bringing on board a developer community, exposing APIs to partners and the external community as well to try and drive new revenue. So there's some examples of being a business-led strategy with your API program. The other key success factor we found was having an executive champion as well, especially if you're starting out from scratch. This is quite a new and unique thing for the enterprise to undertake. So having an executive director or a vice president or someone who can provide that air cover for you is going to be fairly critical to your success. Most recently, one of the things actually we've done that has really helped the program accelerate on the business side is actually trying to do as much as we can ourselves.
Right.
So that's kind of like trying to treat ourselves as a bit of a startup. So really constructing, building and operating everything ourselves. That's helped us to do a couple of things. One is we've been able to keep the quality quite high because we've had the end-to-end control over the developer experience. It's also allowed us to get things out very, very quickly to market because we don't have to go to other teams to wait in line to get things done. We can very, very quickly and easily self-prioritize what's in our queue and then get those things out there. The other important aspect of doing it yourself is you'll learn. You'll learn a heck of a lot, and it's all reliant on you as the business owner. So getting that developer feedback, there's no one else to give that to or to blame for not doing those things, that it's all up to yourself and the experience and what you actually end up giving back to the developers that helps build up that developer experience. So that's the other aspect, I'd say. Do as much as you can yourself.
Excellent. So that's probably all the time we have for questions today. So once again, I want to thank David Freeman from Telstra for joining us today and presenting a very valuable perspective around the experience and the journey that Telstra's been on with their API program. I want to just point out for everyone that we have some great resources available to you. The link's available on the screen now. We have an ebook called The Complete Guide to API Products. So that's available for download. Lots of great insight into the mechanisms by which you should think about productizing APIs and some tips about how to go forward with that. And we have a partner microsite around that as well. The link is available also on the screen. And then also I would remind everyone to not forget that we have another webinar coming up on the 9th of August. And that webcast will be talking about how to guarantee business continuity with 24/7 API monitoring. Also want to mention we have a virtual API jam, which is an opportunity to get hands-on with Apogee and led through some exercises in building and publishing APIs. And that's available on the 30th of July. So thank you once again, everyone, for your time. Thank you again, David. It's been delightful hosting you today, and have a good day.